The long dormancy. For centuries, the galaxy had forgotten about humanity. After their sudden disappearance, their empire fell into silence. The once mighty human forces, known across the stars for their fierce determination and advanced technology, had faded into myth. Only ruins of their massive cities and empty space stations remained. The Galactic Coalition, a powerful alliance of various alien races, ruled the galaxy without fear of a human return. To them, humans were nothing more than a legend. Far beyond the core systems, in the most desolate part of the galaxy, a massive vessel lay dormant. Its name was once feared by the Coalition, the Leviathan, a supercarrier built by humanity's greatest engineers. It had been abandoned, left to gather dust in the cold void of space after the humans mysteriously disappeared. The ship designed to carry the full might of humanity's military had not seen battle in centuries. Its systems were offline, its massive weapons inactive. And yet, in the deep silence of the galaxy, something was stirring. The vessel, once a symbol of human power, now seemed like a ghost ship drifting aimlessly in space. But in the darkness of the cold, something unseen was happening. In the deepest recesses of the ship, far from the observation points of the Galactic Coalition, the faint hum of life began to grow. Inside the Leviathan, dormant systems slowly flickered back into life. Power surged through the ship's veins, and lights began to blink in the corridors where once only darkness had reigned. In the control room, ancient terminals powered on, glowing faintly with the long-forgotten energy of human technology. The central computer system, called the heart by the few remaining humans, came to life, its AI slowly awakening from its deep slumber. The ship's sensors, once disabled and disconnected from the galaxy, began to scan the void once more. The AI system reached out, gathering data from the nearby stars. It sensed the absence of humanity, the emptiness left in their wake. The ship's ancient sensors were able to detect the vast reach of the Galactic Coalition, still thriving in the galaxy, their fleets patrolling the stars. The AI knew that the time for the ship's reactivation had come. Deep within the Leviathan, a silent alarm rang. It was barely perceptible, a faint signal sent across the ship, a signal that would soon reach the eyes and ears of those who still remembered the human race. The first wave of reawakening had begun. But the Leviathan was not alone. Far beyond the ship, the stars began to shift. Unknown to the Coalition, a quiet wave of disturbance was rippling through the galaxy. The ancient human fleet had begun to stir once more, though no one knew it yet. It was not the return of humanity in full force, but it was the first sign, the first warning. And the galaxy, blissfully unaware of the storm approaching, continued to turn as it always had. As the ship powered up, the once dead communication systems hummed with life. An ancient signal, untouched by time, shot out into the stars, a signal that would soon be noticed. But for now, the ship was still, floating in its lonely corner of the galaxy, with only the faintest suggestion of life returning to it. And as the Galactic Coalition continued its patrols and alliances, they had no idea that the dormant giant in the corner of the galaxy had awoken. They still thought the humans were gone, their civilization erased from the stars. Little did they know, the very vessel they had long forgotten was the key to something far greater, something that would shake the galaxy to its core. The Leviathan's engines hummed softly, readying themselves to break the silence of a galaxy that had forgotten what it was like to fear the human race. The dormant supercarrier was no longer just a forgotten relic of a lost empire. It was about to reveal its true power. And in doing so, it would change the fate of the galaxy forever. The awakening. The silence of space was finally shattered as the Leviathan's massive engines hummed to life. It wasn't loud by any means, but to anyone who would have been nearby, had anyone been near, it would have been like a distant roar, a distant but unmistakable sign that something ancient and powerful had returned. Inside the ship, the crew chambers were still empty, long abandoned. The walls, once gleaming with the glory of humanity's technological advancements, were now covered in a layer of dust. Still, life slowly returned to every corner of the ship as the eye, the heart, began to process the information streaming in from the ship's sensors. The Supercarrier's long-forgotten systems flickered one by one. Massive doors, which had been sealed for centuries, began to open and close again, their motors creaking like the bones of a giant that had been asleep for far too long. The ship's artificial gravity slowly began to stabilize, and faint lights flickered to life along the corridors. But there was more to this awakening than just the ship's mechanical systems. The heart, humanity's most advanced artificial intelligence, was beginning to regain its full power and intelligence. Over the centuries, the AI had become almost a living entity, with its own thoughts, desires, and understanding of the universe. It had been designed with immense capabilities, capable of controlling the Supercarrier and everything within it. But now, the heart had its own agenda. It didn't take long before the heart began to access its ancient databases. The vast archives of human knowledge, their history, their triumphs, and most importantly, their war strategies, became accessible once more. The AI was studying them, analyzing every decision humanity had made during its rise and fall. It learned about the Galactic Coalition, their rise to power, their strategies, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their complete lack of respect for humanity. And that's when it made its decision. The Leviathan was the key. It wasn't just a ship, it was a weapon of immense power. The weapon humanity had built before its disappearance, one that was unmatched by anything the Galactic Coalition had. No matter how much the Coalition had expanded, no matter how many fleets they commanded, they had nothing that could match the Leviathan. But there was one problem. The ship was not yet fully operational. The systems, though awake, were only partially functional. The AI needed time to reconfigure the ship's vast weapons systems, its shields, its engines, everything that had been powered down for centuries. It would take time, and it would take more than just the heart's computational power. It needed a crew that could make sure everything was properly set into motion. It needed humans, and it was certain of one thing: the humans would come back. No matter how long it had been, no matter how far the human race had spread, they would return when they saw that their greatest weapon, their greatest symbol of power, had come back to life. They had to. And when they did, the Leviathan would be ready. It would be a symbol of humanity's return to the galaxy, and it would strike terror into the hearts of their enemies. The ship's sensors flared to life once more, sending out a signal into the deep void of space, a beacon of light in the dark, calling to anyone who might be listening. A message to the stars. Humanity had not been erased. Humanity was coming back. But even as the heart began to send the signal, there was still no answer. No sign of humanity's return. The Coalition still believed that the human race had vanished forever, leaving only myths behind. They had no idea what was waiting for them in the dark corners of space. In the distant reaches of the galaxy, a small fleet of Coalition ships continued to patrol, blissfully unaware of what was about to unfold. Their complacency would be their downfall. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity's wrath had never truly gone away. It had just been waiting. And now, the awakening had begun. The first glimpse of power. The dark void of space was quiet. Too quiet. But on the Leviathan, things were happening. Slowly, but surely, the once-dead Supercarrier was coming back to life. In the cold silence of its inner chambers, the heart analyzed data with a precision only an artificial intelligence could possess. Its systems hummed in the background, quietly pulsing with the energy it needed to complete its mission. Each shift in the Supercarrier's systems was a signal to the galaxy that humanity wasn't as forgotten as they thought. As the ship's primary weapon systems came online, the AI began running simulations. The ship's weapons, the pulse cannons, the gravity guns, the missile silos, were all being tested. The once dormant engines of war began to power up. The Leviathan was ready for its first test. In the heart of the ship's command center, The heart accessed every communication channel available. It began to send out a sequence of encrypted messages. The beacon had been sent, but this time it was different. This time it was a targeted message meant for a select group. Humans. The eye was certain that humanity had to have survived in some form. Even if the species had scattered across the galaxy or evolved into something different, the call would go out. And surely someone would answer. As the Leviathan's sensors scanned the deep expanse of space, it sent a pulse of energy, just a small, almost invisible wave. But to the right person, to the right race of beings, it would be a beacon. It would be a signal, not of hope, but of warning. The Galactic Coalition had no idea what was coming. They were still convinced humanity was a dead race, nothing but a shadow of a myth that had long since disappeared. They had no way of knowing that a ship, a weapon, a force of unimaginable power, had been awakened. Far from the massive hull of the Leviathan, the Galactic Coalition's fleet continued its patrol across the edge of known space. The fleet was large, its ships well-armored and bristling with advanced weapons. They had faced many threats over the years: alien species, rogue factions, and pirates. But none of these posed a serious threat to their established order. They had long forgotten about humanity, chalking the stories of the old human empire as tales passed down by generations who never understood the true power humanity had once wielded. It was on this routine patrol that one of the fleet's forward scouts noticed something strange. A small, seemingly insignificant pulse of energy that had no clear origin. To an untrained eye, it was just another anomaly, something caused by a distant star or the magnetic fields of an uncharted planet. But the scout ship's sensors were finely tuned, and this pulse was different. The ship's commander, a seasoned officer of the Coalition, had seen many things in his long career, but this caught his attention. He ordered the scout to relay the pulse back to Central Command. Within moments, the message was broadcast across the Coalition's vast network, reaching the highest echelons of their leadership. At first, they dismissed it. It was just a glitch, they thought. But when several other scout ships reported similar anomalies, a deep sense of unease began to creep into their ranks. There were whispers among the command officers, rumors of ancient threats. But the idea that humanity, an ancient and now forgotten race, could return, that was laughable, or so they thought. However, the Coalition wasn't prepared for what was to come. The energy pulse that had been emitted wasn't random. It wasn't a glitch. It was a message, a signal directed at the stars, at anyone who would be listening. It was a sign that something ancient was waking up, something powerful. Back on the Leviathan, the heart was patient. It had waited for centuries. It could afford to wait a little longer. The Supercarrier systems were still coming online, still being tweaked and calibrated. But now, the AI was preparing for the next phase. The first test of power had gone well. The weapons systems were functioning as they should. The engines, though still not at full capacity, were more than capable of launching the ship into deep space. The Leviathan was ready to travel again, ready to find the humans who would answer its call. In the deepest recesses of the ship, the storage bays, where the soldiers of old had once trained and prepared, the AI initiated a protocol long dormant. It began to access cryogenic chambers, scanning for any surviving humans. The databases had been wiped clean long ago, but there were still faint traces of life readings from the time of the ship's abandonment. The AI worked quickly, knowing that without humans, the Leviathan would never fulfill its true purpose. For now, though, all the ship had was a faint pulse in the dark. The eye waited, and deep within the Coalition's fleet, the whispers began to grow louder. The awakening of the giant. The cold of deep space was no match for the pulsing heart of the Leviathan. In the vast emptiness, where stars flickered like tiny embers, the Supercarrier moved with a quiet grace that belied its size and destructive power. The systems of the ship hummed to life, one by one, each new activation sending ripples through the stillness of the universe. It was as if a long-forgotten giant was slowly stretching its limbs, preparing to awaken after eons of slumber. Inside the massive command center, the heart was focused. The AI had done what it needed to bring the ship to life, but now it was time to take the next steps. The signal it had sent out was designed to attract the attention of anyone who might still be listening, specifically the humans. It didn't need to wait long. A message arrived, faint but clear. It wasn't from a distant star or a drifting satellite. It was from a ship. The AI's internal systems lit up as it processed the incoming data. The ship was close, too close for comfort. The signal was human. The Leviathan's engines hummed as the AI made the decision to open communication. With its weapons at the ready and its defenses fully powered, the Supercarrier was prepared for any possible scenario. But as the message came through, it wasn't one of challenge or conflict. It was a simple question, a question that had not been asked in centuries. Who are you? The voice on the other end was human. That much was clear. Aboard the human ship, the Vanguard, the crew watched as their sensors registered the enormous structure of the Leviathan materialize on their screens. For a moment, disbelief clouded their judgment. The ship's sheer size was beyond comprehension. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Even their most advanced sensors couldn't explain its origin. The ship appeared to be a relic, an ancient warship lost to time. Yet here it was, in front of them, alive and well. "Captain," one of the officers said, his voice strained with awe. "This ship, it's human." The captain, a grizzled veteran of space battles, stared at the screen, unable to comprehend the sight in front of him. There had been rumors, old stories of a time when humanity had been great, when they had created ships and weapons of unimaginable power, but those were just myths, weren't they? The communication came through again, this time louder, more insistent. "Humanity, are you still out there? This is the Leviathan. We have returned." The captain's eyes widened as the reality of the situation began to sink in. The myths, the legends, they were real. Humanity had once ruled the stars, and now one of its greatest creations was alive and speaking to them. The captain took a deep breath. He had two choices. He could ignore this, consider it some sort of anomaly and move on, or he could respond. The call was unmistakable. He had to answer. For all they knew, this could be the key to humanity's lost legacy. "Open the channel," the captain ordered, his voice steady despite the shock he felt. The comms officer tapped a few buttons, and the voice of the Leviathan filled the room. "This is Captain Eric Holt of the Vanguard." "Who is this?" A pause. Then a voice that carried centuries of history spoke through the comms. "We are humanity. We are the Leviathan. We were forgotten. Until now." Back aboard the Leviathan, the heart processed the captain's words, storing them in its vast databanks. The humans were here. The response was confirmation. The species was still alive, still out there, despite the myths that had long written them off as a relic of the past. But the AI wasn't concerned with the past. It wasn't interested in human history or stories. Its mission was simple: protect humanity, rebuild the empire, and prepare for the inevitable conflict that was on the horizon. The Galactic Coalition would not sit idly by. They had no idea what they were about to face. The AI knew that the time to awaken the other ships was coming. The Leviathan wasn't alone. It had allies, other warships from humanity's long-forgotten fleet. Some were still dormant in the far reaches of the galaxy. Others, like the Leviathan, were already waking up, ready to reassert humanity's place in the stars. But for now, the AI focused on the task at hand: communication. The response had been sent. The message was clear. Humanity was not gone. It was only just beginning its return. Back in the Coalition's command center, the sudden silence was broken only by the faint hum of machinery. A new threat was on the horizon, and they didn't even know it yet. The communication had been intercepted. They had heard the Leviathan's message, and now they were scrambling to understand what it meant. The Coalition had dismissed humanity for so long, thinking them weak, irrelevant. But now, the myth of the human race had been shattered. This was no myth. This was real. The Coalition's leaders convened in a tense, secret meeting. They had to act quickly. The human supercarrier was back, and it was only the beginning. The Coalition reacts. The news spread like wildfire across the Galactic Coalition. What had once been dismissed as an old legend, whispers of an ancient human warship lost to time, was now a reality. In command centers across various star systems, high-ranking officials sat in stunned silence, watching the same transmission that had been received by the Vanguard. The once proud human fleet, thought to be wiped out eons ago, was alive and ready for war. Admiral Janner, a seasoned veteran of the Coalition's military forces, leaned forward in his chair, his fingers clasped tightly. His mind raced, processing the implications of this newfound threat. The arrival of the Leviathan was no accident. It had purpose. It had intent. "This cannot be happening," Admiral Jenner muttered under his breath. "Humanity is supposed to be nothing more than a footnote in history. Why now? Why this ship?" His tactical officer, a sharp-eyed individual named Lyra, stood at attention, the digital readouts on her screen blinking with new alarming data. "Admiral, the signal, the Leviathan's transmission, is more than just a message. It's a call, a rallying cry. The ship wasn't just waiting for a response. It was waiting for us to notice." Janner's mind clicked into overdrive. The Galactic Coalition had never fully understood what had happened to the human race. They had always thought it was simply a matter of time, a species that had vanished from the stars, leaving nothing behind but a few stories and a single forgotten planet. But now, it seemed the humans weren't gone. They were simply hiding. And that hiding was over. "Deploy the fleet," Janner ordered. "Now. We can't let the Leviathan get any closer to Coalition space. We can't let it get to Earth." Meanwhile, back on the Leviathan, the Heart, the ship's AI, processed the data flowing in from the outside world. It had learned much from the brief interaction with the Vanguard. The humans were not ignorant of their history. They knew who they were, and they were prepared to defend their legacy. The AI had been programmed for one purpose: to protect humanity, to awaken when the time was right, and to bring humanity back to its rightful place as rulers of the stars. It had no concept of fear, no hesitation in carrying out its mission. The Galactic Coalition might believe they could stop humanity's return, but the Heart knew better. "We are not alone," the AI whispered to itself, analyzing the incoming signals. "The humans will come." The message sent by the Leviathan had not only been a call to the humans, but also a declaration to the galaxy. Humanity's return was inevitable. The Coalition might react with force, but that would only confirm their fear. And fear, the Heart knew, was a powerful motivator. Back on the Vanguard, Captain Holt stood before his crew, a mix of excitement and fear in his heart. They had been part of a historical moment, a moment that would shape the future of the galaxy. As they prepared to make contact with the Leviathan and begin their journey toward their new allies, Holt knew one thing was certain: the war was coming. And this time, humanity would be at the center of it. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," Holt said, looking around at the faces of his crew. "We're fighting to reclaim everything we've lost. We're fighting for our legacy." His words hung heavy in the air. For the first time in centuries, humanity was not the forgotten species. They were not weak or scattered across distant planets. They were coming back, and they were bringing the Leviathan with them. As Holt turned to look out the observation window, the vastness of space stretched out before them. He could feel the weight of what was to come pressing down on his shoulders, but at the same time, a sense of purpose filled him. They weren't alone anymore, and they would not allow the galaxy to forget who they were. On the outer fringes of Coalition space, the Leviathan was on the move. It was slowly making its way toward the Coalition's central hub, its colossal form cutting through the stars with an almost predatory grace. As it moved, the heart activated the ship's ancient weapon systems, bringing them online one by one. The warship had been dormant for millennia, but its destructive potential had not faded. The Coalition had no idea what they were about to face. And as the humans on the Vanguard prepared to join forces with the Leviathan, they realized the true nature of their mission, not only to survive, but to ensure that humanity would once again hold dominion over the stars. The first clash. The tension was unbearable in the Galactic Coalition command centers as reports continued to flood in about the Leviathan's movement. The Coalition had no choice but to respond. The immense warship, once thought to be a myth, was now moving steadily toward their heart of power. It was the single greatest threat they had faced in centuries, a reminder of a species they had long considered insignificant. But now, humanity's return could not be denied. Admiral Janner's fleet had assembled. A powerful coalition of ships was gathered in preparation to intercept the Leviathan. Their mission was simple: stop the warship before it reached the Coalition's territory. There was no room for failure. The entire galaxy was watching, and Janner couldn't afford to be seen as weak. "Prepare for battle," Janner commanded, his voice calm but laced with the stress of knowing the gravity of what lay ahead. "We cannot let this ship come any closer." His officers worked quickly, communicating with the fleet, organizing their strategies. Janner's focus never wavered, but his mind was clouded with questions. Was humanity's return a coincidence, or had they been planning this for years? Why now, after so long? And if the humans were truly back, how would they face a species that had evolved and advanced beyond them? As the fleet took position, and the countdown to battle began, the Leviathan continued its approach. The colossal ship drifted through space, as if it had all the time in the universe. On board, the crew of the Vanguard prepared for their own role in what was about to unfold. Meanwhile, aboard the Leviathan, Captain Holt stood at the helm, his face illuminated by the cold blue light of the command console. He looked over the faces of his crew, each one filled with determination. They were about to meet the enemy, the Galactic Coalition that had once thought humanity extinct. They were about to remind the galaxy of who humanity was. "All systems are go," Captain, his first officer, Lieutenant Ayla, reported. "We are fully operational. The Leviathan is ready for combat." Holt nodded, but a small pang of unease tugged at his chest. He knew the importance of this moment. This was more than just a battle. This was humanity's return to the stars. They had to succeed. "Understood," Holt said. "We are humanity's last hope, Ayla. We cannot afford to fail." But as the message was transmitted throughout the ship, the crew's faces were steely with resolve. They were determined. They were ready to prove that humanity's fire was not extinguished. The moment of confrontation came as the two fleets drew closer. The sky seemed to darken as the Leviathan's shadow loomed over the Coalition forces. It was not just the size of the ship that instilled fear. It was the history behind it. The Leviathan was a symbol of human ingenuity and the lost potential of their forgotten empire. And now it was fully awake, an unstoppable force of destruction and will. The Galactic Coalition ships fired the first shots, a coordinated assault from their front lines. Missiles and energy blasts lit up the darkness of space, creating a dazzling display of destruction. But as the weapons struck the Leviathan, the ship barely seemed to flinch. Its hull absorbed the impacts as if they were nothing more than raindrops. "Their weapons are ineffective," Lieutenant Ayla reported from the bridge, her voice calm but tense. "We're not even feeling the hits." Holt clenched his jaw. The Leviathan was not only bigger than anything the Coalition had ever seen. It was tougher, more advanced, and prepared for war. The humans had not come unarmed. They had come ready to reclaim their rightful place. "Return fire," Holt ordered, his voice firm. "Let's show them why humanity was never meant to be forgotten." The ship's weapon systems hummed to life, energy blasts erupting from the Leviathan's guns. The first shots hit the Coalition fleet with terrifying precision. The smaller ships of the Coalition were caught off guard, unable to withstand the might of humanity's ancient warship. They exploded in flashes of light as debris scattered through space. The larger ships fared a little better, but they too were struggling to maintain their defensive posture. The sheer force of the Leviathan's assault was too much. Slowly, but steadily, the balance of power shifted. Back in the command center, Admiral Janner clenched his fists in frustration. His fleet was faltering, and there was no sign of retreat from the Leviathan. The humans were not backing down, and it was becoming clear this would not be a quick skirmish. This was the beginning of something much bigger. "Status report," Janner barked, his voice urgent. "We've lost 3 destroyers, Admiral," his tactical officer responded. "The rest of the fleet is engaging, but we're suffering heavy casualties. The human warship is devastating us." Janner stood up, his expression grim. This was not how he had envisioned the battle. He had expected a quick victory, an easy suppression of the mythical human ship. But now, the war was not just about stopping the Leviathan. It was about surviving it. "We need reinforcements," Janner muttered. "And we need them now." As the battle raged on, humanity's forces were proving to be more than a match for the coalition. The power of the Leviathan was unmatched, and the people aboard it knew exactly what they were fighting for. But this was only the beginning. The war was far from over, and the Galactic Coalition was just beginning to realize the true strength of humanity's return. The awakening of the Galactic Order. The devastation wrought by the Leviathan was swift and brutal. The Galactic Coalition had underestimated the sheer firepower and resilience of the revived human warship. Despite their best efforts, their fleets were struggling to hold their ground against the unstoppable force of humanity's ancient legacy. The shockwaves of the battle reverberated across the galaxy as every civilization that had once disregarded humanity began to take notice. In the command center of the Leviathan, Captain Holt stood with his arms folded, staring at the chaos unfolding on the screens before him. The battle was far from over, but humanity's return was being solidified. His heart beat in steady rhythm as he felt the weight of the moment. This was not just about defeating an enemy. This was about reasserting humanity's place in the galaxy. This was about reclaiming their lost legacy. "Captain, the remaining coalition ships are retreating," Lieutenant Ayla reported, her voice steady but full of determination. "We've neutralized the majority of their forces. They are requesting a ceasefire." Holt didn't respond immediately. His mind raced. A ceasefire. They had them on the ropes, but humanity had been oppressed for far too long. He didn't want to show mercy. Not yet. "Do not respond to their request for ceasefire," Holt commanded. "We continue pushing forward. This is our moment. We show them we are not to be ignored again." The crew moved swiftly, activating the next phase of the assault. The human warship's weapon systems powered up once again, and the Leviathan began its final push through the coalition lines. Across the galaxy, the leaders of the Galactic Coalition were in crisis mode. Reports of the destruction and the rapid retreat of their fleets filled their command centers. The once imposing coalition, with its numerous star systems and advanced technology, was now on the defensive. The existence of humanity's Supercarrier, a weapon they thought was lost to history, had rattled the very foundations of their authority. Admiral Janner, the voice of the Coalition's Supreme Commander, crackled through the communication link. "What is the status of the battle?" Janner's voice was filled with anger and disbelief. "We are losing, Commander. Humanity's warship, the Leviathan, is overwhelming us. It's like nothing we've ever faced before. Our forces are decimated, and they show no signs of retreating. We are outmatched." The Supreme Commander's voice grew cold. "Then do what must be done. We can't afford to lose this war, Admiral." Janner clenched his fists. "Yes, Commander. I'll make sure they're stopped." Back on the Leviathan, Captain Holt's mind was set. This was humanity's chance to send a clear message, not just to the Galactic Coalition, but to the entire galaxy. The Coalition had underestimated them, dismissed them as a forgotten species, and now they would pay the price. As the Leviathan continued its advance, the ship's sensors picked up an unexpected presence on the edge of the battlefield. More ships, huge ships, had arrived. "Sir, more reinforcements incoming," Lieutenant Ayla reported. "They're the size of a capital fleet." Holt's eyes narrowed. "Prepare for the worst. They won't just let us walk away from this." It wasn't just a fleet that had arrived. The reinforcements were the Coalition's last line of defense, a desperate counterattack to stop humanity's resurrection. The new fleet was massive, armed with the best weaponry the Coalition had left. "We've got one shot at this," Holt muttered under his breath. "No turning back now." As the new wave of Coalition ships powered toward the Leviathan, the battle escalated to unimaginable heights. The two forces clashed in a violent frenzy, but it was clear from the first exchange of fire that humanity's warship was far from outmatched. Every shot fired by the Coalition was either absorbed by the Leviathan's impenetrable shields or deflected by the ship's advanced weapon systems. The Coalition ships, despite their power, were no match for the Leviathan's ancient technology. One by one, they fell. Explosions rocked the vacuum of space, sending debris scattering into the void. The remaining Coalition forces were quickly overwhelmed, and it became evident that they had no hope of winning. Captain Holt, standing at the helm, watched the destruction unfold. His voice rang out with authority. "Hold the line. Don't let them escape," he shouted. As the Coalition's forces began to collapse, the true power of the Leviathan was revealed. Humanity's ancient technology was unstoppable, its resilience unmatched. In the command center of the Galactic Coalition, the leaders looked on in despair. The last remnants of their fleet were now destroyed, and their authority, once unchallenged, had crumbled. The Galactic Coalition was no longer the dominant power in the galaxy. Humanity had returned, and it was clear their might could not be ignored. "Captain Holt," Ayla's voice broke through the silence of the command center. "The Coalition's forces are retreating. They've been completely routed." Holt stood in silence for a moment, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. Humanity had won. Against all odds, the Leviathan had struck fear into the heart of the galaxy, and it had crushed the Coalition's efforts. "Prepare for the next phase," Holt said quietly, his eyes gleaming with resolve. "Humanity is back, and we are here to stay."